So much for this game, and Kennedy has been here before, obviously, but there are so many great players in this league that have deserved this for a really, really long time, and luckily, it's coming now.
If you circled one preseason game on the WNBA calendar, it was April 29th at Wintrust Arena. Angel Reese, two-time All-Star, the most physically dominant rebounder this league has seen in years, walking back into the building where her career started. This time wearing Atlanta Dream colors against the team that drafted her, the team that traded her, and the teammate who was still standing right in her way when she drove to the basket. The buildup was enormous. The expectations were loud on both sides. And what actually happened left the internet completely dissecting every frame. Reese shot 2 of 7 from the field in 13 minutes. Kamilla Cardoso swatted her Euro step attempt back at her and recovered the defensive rebound. The Dream won 87-78. And the conversation that followed told you almost everything you need to know about where Angel Reese stands right now, where the Chicago Sky are headed, and why this 2-year chapter of her career matters far beyond any single preseason box score. To understand why this game hit the way it did, you have to go back to how Reese arrived in Chicago in the first place and what the 2 years between then and now actually looked like. She was drafted 7th overall by the Chicago Sky in 2024, the same draft class that produced Caitlin Clark, Kamilla Cardoso, and Rickea Jackson. She came in with enormous expectations and delivered on them statistically in ways that were genuinely impressive. Her rookie season showed a player who could dominate the boards and create problems around the basket in ways that most players her age cannot. Her second season pushed her averages even further: 14.7 points, 12.6 rebounds, and 3.7 assists per game, while shooting 45.8% from the field. Those are all-star numbers, and she earned 2 all-star selections during her 2 years in Chicago. But here's the part that the stat line doesn't capture. The team went 23-61 across those 2 seasons combined. They missed the playoffs twice. And the record actually got worse in year 2, not better. Whatever Reese was producing individually, it wasn't translating into wins, and that gap between personal production and team success became the central tension of her entire time with the franchise. The public friction started escalating last September when Reese sat down with the Chicago Tribune and didn't hold back about what she felt the Sky's front office needed to do. She made it clear that the roster wasn't good enough, that the organization needed to add real talent around her, and that she was frustrated with the direction of the team. Those comments got her suspended for part of a game for conduct deemed detrimental to the franchise. The suspension made national news. The locker room situation generated coverage for weeks. And the idea that Reese's relationship with the organization was broken beyond repair started spreading across every corner of sports media. Then came the 6th of April, 2026. The Chicago Sky traded Angel Reese to the Atlanta Dream in exchange for Atlanta's first-round picks in 2027 and 2028, plus a second-round pick swap in 2028. Chicago got future assets for a player still under contract and still producing at an all-star level. Atlanta got a genuine front-court piece to place alongside Rhyne Howard, Alicia Gray, Brianna Jones, Jordan Canada, and Naz Hillman, a core that had already won 30 games the previous season and lost in the first round of the playoffs while looking for exactly the kind of interior presence that Reese provides. Reese called it a breath of fresh air at her introductory press conference in Atlanta on April 17th. She talked about feeling wanted, about being around players who could actually compete for a championship, and about how Atlanta made her feel seen in a way Chicago apparently never managed to. "I low-key makes me emotional because I haven't had this," she said. "I'm really grateful and I'm really looking forward to the start." Her new teammates wasted no time welcoming her in the most Atlanta way possible. Rhyne Howard, Alicia Gray, and Naz Hillman filmed a video that went viral almost immediately, playfully cooking Reese about her time with the Sky before wrapping her into the fold with clear, genuine affection. Howard noted her own statistical dominance against Reese in past matchups. Gray quipped that she always had her best games against Chicago. And Hillman added her own flavor to the roast, while Reese laughed along with all of it. That vibe, playful, confident, and rooted in mutual respect, was exactly the atmosphere Reese said she had been missing. And then Atlanta confirmed it formally by picking up the 4th-year option on her rookie contract, extending her through the 2027 WNBA season. The organization was all in on this before she had even played a single game for them. So when April 29th arrived and the Dream showed up at Wintrust Arena for their first preseason game, the stage was completely set for something significant. This was the game where Reese could walk back in, perform at her usual level, and show Chicago exactly what they gave up for a pair of draft picks. The crowd at Wintrust Arena was genuinely large for a preseason game. Dozens of people still wearing Reese jerseys and Reese shirts, signs that said, "Angel, when you're back in Chicago, we love you," and real noise when she was introduced. Chicago played a tribute video for her on the Jumbotron during the first time out that covered her all-star appearances, her records, and the moments that had connected her to Sky fans over 2 years. The crowd gave her a standing ovation for it, even though she was locked in the visiting team's huddle and couldn't see it happen. There was genuine warmth in that building for Angel Reese, even from fans who understood the chapter had ended. And then the game started, and the conversation shifted dramatically. Reese played 13 minutes, shot 2 of 7 from the field, and finished with 8 points, 7 rebounds, 2 assists, and 3 steals. She also shot 4 of 8 from the free throw line. The 2 for 7 shooting percentage works out to about 28.6%, which the source material rounds to 29%. That's not an off night where the ball rattled out or the shots were good looks that didn't fall. That's a player who couldn't impose herself on the game offensively in the limited time she was out there. And the shot selection and execution came under immediate scrutiny online, particularly one sequence that became the defining image of the entire evening. With 3:17 remaining in the second quarter, Reese brought the ball up from her own half in an isolation situation against Kamilla Cardoso. They had been going at each other all game. Reese tried to create separation with a crossover, but couldn't get past Cardoso cleanly, then attempted a Euro step toward the basket. Cardoso was immovable. She swatted the attempt away and recovered the defensive rebound on the same play. The WNBA posted the clip on social media almost immediately with the caption, "Kamilla Cardoso sends it back against her former teammate." Within minutes, it was everywhere, getting stitched and quote-tweeted and dissected across every corner of WNBA discourse. The block itself was just a good defensive play. Cardoso is one of the better rim protectors in the league, and Reese was trying to create in traffic, which is a high-difficulty attempt regardless of the defender. But the context surrounding it is what gave the moment so much weight. Cardoso is precisely the player Chicago chose to invest in and keep when they decided to move on from Reese. She was drafted 3rd overall in 2024, 2 spots ahead of Reese's 7th pick, and stayed with the Sky through the same 2 miserable seasons. Now she's the centerpiece of Chicago's rebuild, playing for a squad that has since added Skylar Diggins, Dejanai Carrington, Rickea Jackson, and Azura Stevens around her. When Cardoso swatted that Euro step back toward half court, the crowd understood the whole 2-year story in about 1 second. Every fan in that building knew what it meant. The clips made sure everyone who wasn't there understood it just as clearly by the time the 4th quarter started. The technical critique of the play spread quickly too, and it connected to a longer conversation about Reese's finishing consistency that has followed her since she entered the league. Several analysts pointed out that her technique on that drive was inefficient, shooting from her hip rather than using her full lower body to elevate, failing to tilt her body toward the basket the way the play demanded. These are not new observations. Her shooting form inside the paint has been a point of discussion throughout her WNBA career, and she has worked on it, including with Lisa Leslie on her overhead form. As a rookie, she finished 44.5% on shots within 5 feet of the basket. By her second season, that had improved to 51.6%, so the improvement is real and documented. But when Cardoso is the defender and you're trying to Euro step from outside the paint in an ISO, those mechanics get exposed, and the internet was not gentle about it. "Still shooting the ball from her waist," wrote one fan. Another noted it was a tactical problem as much as a technical one. Reese in an ISO situation at the top of the key is not how the Dream's offense is going to use her, and seeing her bring the ball up and create off the dribble against elite rim protection highlighted the mismatch between what she was doing in that moment and what her actual role is designed to look like. The limited minutes also generated conversation about what the 1-3-minute stint actually meant. Dream coach Tanisha Wright's rotation plan had the starters playing roughly the first half before the second half went to a different look lineup, which explains the time restriction across the board for Atlanta's veterans. But a player who wants to prove she's an all-star level contributor in a revenge-adjacent context, going 2 for 7 in 13 minutes doesn't leave a clean impression. Regardless of the rotation reasoning behind, Rhyne Howard was the actual engine of Atlanta's offense that night, knocking down 3 three-pointers in the first half and leading the 16-0 run that put the Dream ahead by 20 points and effectively decided the game's outcome. Alicia Gray added her own contributions. The Dream won comfortably, but the fingerprints on that win belonged to Howard and Gray far more than to Reese, and everyone watching the tape could see it clearly. None of this, importantly, is how Reese herself chose to frame the night. And that's worth acknowledging, because the post-game Angel Reese was notably different from the version of her that existed in public during her final months in Chicago. She was open, grateful, reflective, and entirely free of the defensiveness that characterized so many of her media interactions as a Sky player. When reporters asked why things didn't work out in Chicago, she didn't attack the franchise or try to relitigate old arguments. "I think it was helpful for both of us," she said. "I'm grateful for Chicago for putting me in a situation where I can come somewhere that I really wanted, and people that really wanted me. No love lost. I am just really grateful and happy to be here." She talked about how Atlanta had been pushing her to take shots she previously wasn't fully confident taking, and how her new teammates patted her on the back for those attempts regardless of whether they went in. "They still uplifted me in ways that I probably didn't have before," she said. And she said it without apparent resentment, just with recognition that the environment she had been missing for 2 years was now the one she was actually playing in. After the final buzzer, she shared a hug with Sky coach Tyler Marsh on the court and waved to the crowd as she headed to the visitors' locker room for the first time in her career. Marsh was generous about it from his end, too. "I was just telling her to go be great, go kill it," he said. "She's with a championship-caliber team. You saw some of her talents and things that she can do with them tonight. She fits in perfectly, and she'll be great." That level of mutual civility was a long way from the suspension drama and the Tribune interview and the locker room tension reports that defined the end of her time in Chicago. Whatever the 2 years were, the goodbye at Wintrust Arena was handled with more class than the months that preceded it. The Chicago Sky's off-season trajectory deserves its own examination here, because the speed and quality of their rebuild after moving on from Reese says a lot about the environment she was part of. When Reese played in Chicago, reports consistently described the locker room as tense and fractured. Free agents with real choices weren't prioritizing the Sky as a destination. The franchise felt stuck, and the narrative around it hardened into the idea that nobody wanted to be there. Then the trade happened, and almost immediately, Skylar Diggins-Smith, a former All-Star with years of playoff experience, signed with Chicago. DeJounte Carrington, one of the best perimeter defenders in the entire league, signed with Chicago. Azura Stevens added frontcourt depth. And Rickea Jackson, who had earned all-rookie recognition in 2024 and put up 14.7 points per game in her second season, arrived via trade from the Los Angeles Sparks. That is not a rebuilding haul assembled out of scraps. That's a legitimate roster built around Cardoso that could compete for a playoff spot and possibly more depending on how the season develops. The correlation between Reese's exit and the caliber of players willing to sign with the franchise is not something anyone around the league has ignored. Jackson receiving Reese's number 5 jersey caused its own separate controversy online, with Reese's supporters calling for the franchise to retire her number rather than hand it to a new player. That particular argument didn't get much traction given that retiring numbers is reserved for players who bring championships and generational moments, not 2 years of missed playoffs. But the intensity of the reaction illustrated how personally Reese's fans took every element of the transition. The franchise's response was simply to move forward, and Cardoso swatting Reese's shot in the preseason game felt like a visual summary of that posture. The comparison to Caitlin Clark that inevitably colors any discussion of Angel Reese's career is worth addressing directly and with actual context. They entered the league together. Same draft year, same rookie season, same 2-year window to build something. Clark's Indiana Fever improved steadily across both years, made the playoffs for the first time in a decade, kept selling out arenas, and kept attracting players who had options. Reese's Chicago teams went in the opposite direction, finishing with a worse record in year 2 than year 1. That's not entirely Reese's fault. The roster around her in Chicago was genuinely limited in ways she publicly acknowledged at her own professional cost. But the contrast in outcomes after 2 years in the same league is real, and the numbers don't soften it. Clark is now heading into year 3, as the face of a franchise built around her with a legitimate championship conversation surrounding it. Reese is heading into year 3 on a new team, having been traded for draft picks, trying to prove she's the player Atlanta needs to push over the top.